Hey, Global Issues class. So, as you all know by now, my celebrating was a bit premature. It looks like we are going to be doing things this way for the rest of the semester. So, I don't know about you guys, I've been doing the best I can to keep busy. I figured we could start off our lecture with this. I have been trying to learn a little bit more about tarot reading. So I figured we'll do a one-card draw here. Let's see, who do I want to... Got my little mini deck here. We'll do a one-card draw, and this is going to be for, let's do, Emma. Let's do Emma. Emma, I am going to do a one-card tarot draw for you and tell you your fortune, girl. Let's see. Are you ready? Here is the deck. I'm going to do 9 of Pentacles. 9 of Pentacles. I should, forewarning here, I have no idea what I'm doing. 9 of Pentacles. Let's look this up in the book here for a minute. 9 of Pentacles, 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 Pentacles. Pentacles. Page 10. 9 of Pentacles. All right. 9 of Pentacles. And it is, it is a woman. Emma, it's a woman. Stands in a vineyard holding a rare bird. Maybe it's an osprey. Holding a rare bird. Wisdom, knowledge, and talent are present, but no love life. This is oh my God, this is a lonely time to be met with a measure of detachment. So, Emma, I'm hoping that there's no love life and it's a lonely time only because you are properly socially distancing. And the thing here says success, recognition, and wealth will follow. So, guys, that's Emma's fortune. Okay, let's all weep for Emma. No, no love life, and it's a lonely time to be met with a measure of detachment. Okay, I can't. This tarot is too trippy. I can't. Okay, so silliness aside here. This is lecture Global Issues 4.6. This is part 1 of 2 talking about nationalism. I'm really bummed that we can't do this nationalism one in person in particular because, hello, there are 4 of you, right, that are going to be commenting down below with your vignettes. So this was going to be a lot cooler. It was going to be an opportunity to have these 4 really interesting case studies of nationalism. We're going to do the best we can here. Please, guys, do your best, the 4 of you that have the vignettes. Comment down below with some cool information for us so we can do something here to have it be a more interesting discussion, okay? So nationalism has a lot of definitions, and the first slide that I'm doing here, I'm putting it up for you. We're going to just break down what some of these mean because there's a lot of confusion, all right, that people are often misusing these terms. So first we have something like nation, a group of people who recognize each other as sharing a common identity with a focus on homeland. So nation, a group of people who recognize each other as sharing a common identity. So you could think of something like the Navajo Nation, okay? You have a recognized identity even to the point of you being able to do DNA testing to prove that you not only have cultural affiliation, but actual blood ties to this nation, okay? It's not a state, it's a nation. It's a group of people. This group of people can move, can be transitioned across borders. Typically there is a sense of there being a homeland, but even in the case where homeland has been taken away, you still have a strong nation that remains. Then we have this second term, nation state. So here we're bringing states into it, a political community in which the state claims legitimacy on the grounds that it represents the nation. This is a widely used term, but note what I have on the slide here. No such entity currently exists. There is no state in existence today that 100% represents a single nation. Even if you take a country like Japan, that is, at certain points in time, it was like 98, 99% homogenous. There are still ethnic minority groups in Japan. There is not a 100% understanding that this government represents one single nation, okay? Nationalism then, this one variant of nationalism that we're going to talk about, is the idea that the world is divided into nations that provide overriding focus of political identity and loyalty. And this in turn demands national self-determination. Okay, so nationalism is this sense that we will come together as a community and rally behind a government, and this government represents us as this community, and that all around the world, this is naturally what people do. So we rally over here, and they rally over there, and we all come together and form these nations, and that nationalism spurs us into doing it. We want to do it. We want to categorize ourselves, lump ourselves separately and apart from others to create this sense of nation distinct to ourselves. That's one variant of nationalism. National self-determination then being this right of distinct groups to become states. So if you think of the end of colonization, the explosion of independence in something like sub-Saharan Africa in the 1960s, really starting in 1960, country after country after country emerging through this sense of national self-determination. We have a right as the Tswana people to create the country of Botswana. We have the right as the Chewa people to create Malawi and be something separate and distinct from Botswana. We're not Tswana, we're Chewa, okay? This sense of self-determination. We have a right to do this. So I'm going to have us pause here, and I would love for you, it's linked down below, there's a really good video on theories of nationalism. It's very well done. It outlines some interesting things that we can talk about, okay? So pause here, go watch this video, and we'll come right back together. So hopefully you watched that video. I would love to know what you think about this. So comment down below if you want to. I'd love to know what you think about this idea of states creating a sense of a homogenized national history that allows you to push on and pursue a national agenda, pursue nationalism, right? It's a mythology. This mythology is largely made up. It's not real. What do we think about that? The idea that a lot of it is perception rather than reality, forming some type of cohesive bond that we then share and develop a strong country out of, a strong national identity. What do you think about that? Do you think it's a good thing that states engage in this type of behavior? A useful thing? Why or why not? So nationalism takes a lot of different forms. It's not just we have some type of shared ethnic identity. Yes, there are countries like a Japan where you overwhelmingly have a shared ethnic identity. Botswana, I think Botswana is like over 80% Tswana, okay? You definitely have those cases. But not all countries can play that game. The US in particular has been much more a civic nationalism, right? There's this idea of being an American. There's a very strong understanding of what is an American, what is not an American, what are American values. So you can be black, you can be white, you can be purple, and still be an American if you're embracing American values and American civic mindedness, okay? Other forms of nationalism, elite nationalism, popular nationalism, okay? We're going to talk about exclusively popular nationalism in the next lecture, all right? And the thing to say here is that because there are so many different forms that nationalism can take, the path from nation to state is not identical. There are a wide variety of cases here as to how a nation does or does not become a state. So let's pause here for a second and ask, what is needed to form a new state? How do you actually transition from nation to state? How do you do that successfully? We can argue that there are three things that are needed, three things to transition from nation to state, if that's what you're trying to do. The first one is power. You have to have strength, whether it's military power in some cases. You need military power to be able to push another state out and say, this is my territory, get out of it. We are our own state now. We are determining we are separate from you, get out. So you may have to have military power to get them out. In a lot of cases, you also need economic power. It is not enough to just say bye-bye to a state that is currently holding the land that you're claiming is your state. Yes, you may have military power and be able to push them out, but if you don't have any type of economic power, the question of, well, what happens next? How do we continue to move forward and function as a state if we don't have any economic power? Do we have any goods? Do we have anything that we can trade? How do we create relationships with other states with no economic power to speak of? So you got to have both. You have to have the military and you have to have the economic power. You have to have the cultural power too. You have to have this sense of being able to create a national mythology that people can get behind. You have to be powerful enough to do that. The second thing you need that ties, that can sew these things together, whether it's military, economic, cultural power, you have to have legitimacy at home. So you will not become a new state if your own citizens are sitting there saying, nah, we don't want this. We don't want to become our own state. We like things the way that we are, the way that they are. We want to stay as a part of this state. Okay? Idaho is never going to split off from the United States because no one in Idaho would allow the Idaho government to make that happen, right? There is no legitimacy for that within the Idaho community that they're saying, yes, free Idaho, right? It's not happening. The last piece that you need then that ties into this idea of sovereignty and autonomy is recognition abroad. Again, Idaho cannot split off from the US even if they have military and economic and cultural power and they've got legitimacy at home and 100% of Idahoans, Idaho people agree that they want to split away. If there's no recognition abroad, if no one else anywhere in the world is saying, yes, Idaho, I see you and I respect you and I recognize your right to self-determination and I would like to establish the first embassy, the embassy of Sweden in Idaho. If that doesn't happen, if you don't have any recognition abroad from states, recognition from IOs is one thing, and that can get the ball rolling, but more than anything, you need recognition from other states to actually succeed. Okay? So those are the things you need. You need power, you need legitimacy at home, and you need recognition abroad. And then if you have those things, you can ask, okay, well, what is the most likely way in which a new state will emerge? So there's a couple things we can say here too. So you may have a new state emerge through what we call secession. So secession is a breaking away from another state. We had an attempted case of secession here in the US. That's how it started for us. It started with secession. It transitioned into the next thing here, revolution and or civil war. That can be another way that a state actually separates. So it may be not enough to just secede. Sometimes the secession can be peaceful. Other times you have to fight. You can secede. It may not be recognized by the state you're trying to secede from, and then you engage in civil war. Another way that you can do it, interestingly, a referendum. This just happened even in the case of something like Brexit with the EU. The United Kingdom voted to secede from the EU, to leave the EU, and it passed. And we're going to talk about a couple of other examples of states that have attempted this. They have said, you know what, rather than us fight a bloody war over this, rather than us do some type of complicated things where we're collapsing regimes, creating a revolution, let's just vote. Do you guys want to leave? Check yes or no. The last one then that I just mentioned, the collapse of a former nation. So something like the breakdown of Yugoslavia, the breakdown of the former Soviet Union, creating a splintering effect where you do have the forming of new states bounded by separate senses of national identity. So let's take a brief pause here, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to highlight a couple of things for you in terms of these vignettes. I would love for my vignette people to be ready to be commenting down below about these different cases that we're going to talk about. All right, we will be right back together. Okay, so we obviously can't have as much of a fruitful discussion as that I wanted to have in the class with these case studies. But we've got 4 case studies that I want us to look at of either successful attempts or unsuccessful attempts of nations becoming new states. So the first one I want us to talk about, most people have never heard of this, Biafra. Biafra is up first, and I would love for I think this is Joe, right? Joe, do you have Biafra? I'd love for you to comment down below here. Tell us a little bit about it. Where in the world are we talking about? What did they attempt? How did they attempt to separate? And was it successful? Okay, so check the comments down below and learn a little bit about Biafra and whether or not this was a successful attempt at separation or not. Let's look at this second case then. South Sudan. Fill us in with a little bit more information with your vignette here. What happened in the case of South Sudan? Why did they want to separate? What led them to that point where they're saying, we can no longer be a part of Sudan, we will secede, we will fight a civil war to continue to force our independence, and ultimately being able to vote. Okay, so this is an interesting case where they had multiple things. They had a secession, they had a civil war, they had a referendum vote for independence. All of those happened. And hopefully, as the vignette comment below shows, it was successful. So take a minute, read over that, and learn a little bit about this particular case. This third case that we can look at here, this is probably the most well-known of all of these cases for you guys. It's the case of Palestine. And again, we can ask the question of, was this successful or not? Have they been able to manage statehood or not? And there's a lot of things that we can talk about here with this case. Hopefully the person that has the vignette is commenting with a couple of things down below. What are some of the key challenges that face the Palestinians in terms of shifting from nation to state? What are the challenges here? Why has this been such a protracted conflict where the Palestinians are continuing to not be recognized with official statehood status, right? What are the big issues at play? I'll pop a picture up here so that you can see, in particular, a challenge has been geography, the challenge of geography. In the case of something like Biafra and in South Sudan, it was a little bit, not easy, but easier than the case of Palestine and Israel geographically to separate the two. It was easier with Biafra to make a line this way, and it was easier with South Sudan to make a line this way. Palestine, Israel, that is one of the largest challenges here, is the challenge of geography. And is it realistic at this point to create a state that has multiple pieces ensconced within another state? I've linked a video down below on why Palestine is not currently a state. Go ahead and watch that if you're interested. Let me know if you have any questions, any concerns about it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts because this is one that definitely makes the news a heck of a lot more than South Sudan ever did, or for sure Biafra ever did. The last one we'll talk about briefly here is Scotland. This was a very interesting case. Anyone that's a fan of Braveheart or has followed British history in any way, shape, or form over the centuries can know that Scotland has had both a very bloody history of attempted separation, civil wars, secessionist movements, attempting to fall regimes and create coups, and et cetera, et cetera. They've tried a lot of different ways to gain separation from England. The most recent thing that they attempted, hopefully you're commenting down below with your vignette information, they did a referendum. They did a referendum vote to stay or go. And this is, again, a really interesting case where ultimately they opted to stay. They opted to stay with the UK, okay? And so our leader of this vignette is going to be commenting down below with some information about how close was this vote? What were some of the challenges that surfaced with people very similar to Brexit, maybe not totally understanding what they were voting for, the ramifications of the vote? Again, I am posting a video that's very interesting. It's a Guardian video talking about the referendum. You're welcome to watch that. It's very good. It goes into a lot of the politics, some of this behind the scene politics and kind of some of the BS, some of the propaganda, some very interesting videos and things like that about leading up to the vote and kind of who took what side in this issue. Pretty interesting. So that's linked down below and you can watch that one as well. Okay. So the last thing that will stay here is just this idea that the UN understands that there is a lot of challenges here with statelessness, that there has been not only prior to the fall of the Soviet Union, but particularly after the fall of the Soviet Union, there have been stateless people. And so even within the UN, they have the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization. So this is a 1991 organization, and so members can include everything from indigenous groups, minorities, unrecognized or occupied territories. And the idea here with this group is focusing on spreading the awareness of the right to self-determination. Former members of this are things like Armenia, East Timor, Estonia, Latvia, Georgia, Palau in South Pacific. Current members are things like the Aceh, the Hmong, I mentioned, Somaliland in Somalia. They want separation from Somalia. They want to be their own independent state with their own governance structure. Even something like the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., is a member of the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization because it's a district, not a state. So it does not get the same voting power, the same representation that other states do, even though it's the seat of our government, right? Our federal government. So that makes it pretty interesting that Washington, D.C. is a member of this Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization. So South Sudan is not the last time that we are going to see a new state emerge. I can just guarantee you that. It is going to be interesting to keep watching things like Kurdistan, to see whether Kurdistan is able to make the shift to statehood, full legitimized statehood. You can see a lot of things moving on the ground there in terms of power. Yes, they do have power. They have military power, they have economic power, they have control of oil fields. They have legitimacy at home for sure. There is very much a sense of Kurds having a homeland, having a shared language and common identity, and wanting to have a territory of their own. What they lack at this point is representation and recognition abroad. There are not enough countries yet saying, I see you, Kurdistan, I recognize you, I would like to establish diplomatic ties with you, separate from Iraq or Turkey or Syria, right, that Kurdistan currently sits within, okay? So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the coming years with who's going to be next in terms of creating a new state. With the threats of things like climate change, there's also a sense to which who is going to disappear as a state. So something like a Tuvalu, the fact that Tuvalu is sinking, not so much sinking, right? We keep saying Tuvalu is sinking. Ocean levels rising are meaning that the atolls that currently create the island nation of Tuvalu, they are being submerged under the water. So it is realistic to assume that possibly even within our lifetime, Tuvalu as a territory will no longer exist. What will that mean to the identity of states, to the definition? If we're saying we're already in more of a neo-Westphalian system of states where sovereignty is already under attack from things like humanitarian intervention and international organizations and global liberal economy, what about the threat of climate change sinking countries into the ocean? How will that change notions of nation and state if, once again, we're transitioning back to more of like a nomadic understanding of people are the state. The territory is not the state, the people are the state. So Tuvalu could still exist. Maybe it's just they move to Australia, right? They're stateless people and Australia grants them a piece of land and we say we're going to plant our flag again and this is new Tuvalu, right? There's some interesting things that are going to be happening here, both in terms of new states emerging out of nations and states disappearing, all right? If you have any other questions, if you have comments, if you have ideas about what state you think might emerge next or what state you think might disappear next, comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Otherwise, don't forget to go to Canvas and take your Canvas quiz, and I will see you guys for the next lecture.